Just like we can get tension in our shoulders and neck or anywhere we have muscles, we can also create tension in the pelvic floor. So today we'll just explore that a little bit, specifically around the sitting bones. So that's those big bones right there. And you can feel them, and that's what we'll do. We'll take a hand and we'll kind of sit on the sitting bone. So when you move around, you can feel it. So we'll bring the awareness to the sitting bones, and we will specifically think about the muscles just to the inside of the sitting bones. So this is part of the pelvic floor. Once we have established a little bit of awareness here, we'll do a bit of massage. Now you could just do that with your hands sitting on the sitting bone, or we'll use tennis balls, or you could use something like a tune-up ball, which are a bit softer. But we'll play around with a tennis ball and we'll literally just move it just to the inside of the sitting bone, so not too close to the genitals. So we have to be really mindful of the area here. So this is your pelvis. When you're sitting down more or less like this, and we'll just take a hand, slide it underneath the sitting bone, and we'll imagine we could breathe into it. So let's go ahead, find a comfortable seat. If you're not comfortable on the floor, sit on a chair. And then from here, take your hand underneath your buttock, and you can kind of move around a little bit so you can feel that bony part. And then maybe close the eyes. You could move your pelvis just to have a little bit more of awareness. And with the eyes closed, just imagine you could drop down into that hand, into that sitting bone. And imagine you could take the breath right down into that part of your pelvis. And for me, closing the eyes is making that awareness easier. You could even imagine a warmth or just a softness, releasing any unnecessary tension. Taking the breath down to your fingertips, to your hand, to that sitting bone. And that might feel that's perfect, that's where you want to go today. Or you can start to create a bit more mobility. So you could move around a little bit more to just become aware of this area as you move around the sitting bone with your fingers. So your fingers might be stationary, but you'll move around, you'll do a little bit of a massage. Otherwise, you could take your tennis ball and you'll put it near your sitting bone. So you could start from the outside. So you'd have to use your support a bit. I'm leaning onto my hand and I'm on my right side. So I'll press down for the left leg, and I can just find a bit of mobility around the buttock. So you can, if I bend both knees, you can see a bit more. So I'm kind of massaging around the buttock to the outside of the hip. And then finding mobility. So this might be a little bit more challenging because you are kind of lifting a little bit away from the floor. And then you could literally sit down and find again where you had your fingertips. So just kind of to the inside of the sitting bone, but again, really be aware of the very delicate areas around here. So you want to find ease. And you find the spot that just feels good for you. And you might have to move around a bit with your legs so you're not pressing too much. But you could have a little bit of movement. And if you find a spot where you think, okay, I could sit here for a little bit, so you adjust your legs. And you might just find a spot and you breathe into that spot. So there are quite a lot of trigger points. So if it feels too intense, you move away, and you certainly don't want any pressure around the genitals or the anus. There are lots of nerve endings there, so you don't want too much pressure there. But they're kind of the bigger muscles you can. And And you could also massage really without moving the ball, but like here, again, I'm on my right side. I can just move the right thigh, so just getting a little bit of movement in. Maybe again sitting cross-legged, so shifting further forward, tilting the pelvis forward. You can just about see the ball. Finding just a good position. And if you notice you hold your breath, you can either notice if you can actually deepen the breath, or it's your body saying, this is not comfortable, this is not a good spot for me, and then you adjust. Once you've done this for a bit on one side, so for me it was the right side, we come back to sitting. Again, I'll just bring the hand just towards the sitting bone. Breathe into the fingertips, into the right sitting bone, maybe into that whole area of the right pelvis. So for me, as a female body, you can breathe into the right ovary. The right side of the pelvic floor. And then we can do the other side. So I have my legs crossed, generally with the right leg forward. So I'll change that crossing, bring my left hand underneath the left buttock. And again, for you, you might have started on the other side. Again, just taking a moment, maybe closing the eyes. Imagining you could breathe into your fingertips, into that sitting bone. Perhaps even into that whole side of the pelvis. The pelvic organs on this side. Again, you might move the sitting bone forward and backwards, so little circular movements. You could stay with this. Again, you could simply sit on a firm chair so you can feel that awareness, and imagining or allowing any unnecessary tension or holding on or gripping to dissolve. And that might be enough for you today. Or again, you could grab hold of your tennis ball or that tune-up ball and make little movements. So you could move the whole body across the ball. You could come out to the outside of the hip. A lot of us have tension in kind of the outside of the hip and the glutes. So we might also just find this is on the outside. I'm on the outside, so towards the glutes, and that just sitting on there, there's usually a nice trigger point or a nice kind of mama point that you can just enjoy sitting on for a bit, because everything is connected. But we will focus kind of to the inside near the sitting bone. So I'll come to the inside of the sitting bone now. And again, maybe I'll simply sit here for a bit. Or maybe coming forward. So it takes a bit of time, so it's difficult to copy someone else because our bodies are so different. So this is really an exploration for you. And if it feels, specifically with the tennis balls are quite hard, if it feels too much, you could always sit on cushions. So I can take my right side of my right sitting bone on cushions, and then potentially having that tennis ball towards the left. So to take a little bit of the pressure off, so you find again where it feels good for you. Whoops. Again, you could shift slightly forward. And again, notice if you're lifting up, tightening up, then our point is to release tension, to open up. Because very often we have that tightness of rising. And eventually you can let go of the tennis ball, bring that same hand underneath that sitting bone again, closing the eyes if that's comfortable. And again, imagining breathing into the fingertips, into that whole side of the pelvis, into the sitting bone. Making sure that you feel safe and that this is a safe and comfortable practice for you. And then eventually let go of that sitting bone and just take a moment to integrate, allowing the sitting bones to release, the tailbone can relax. There's a widening and opening of the pelvic floor so it stays mobile. And then once you're ready to move on to the rest of your practice or the rest of your day, then enjoy.